Okay, ready to get started. So first, we're all thrilled to be here. This is a great, great topic. And we as a team have spent some time talking about this. But let me introduce this panel that we brought today. First, Brian Gleason from Xaxis. Brian is a dynamic, results-driven executive with a distinguished career in building and motivating highly effective organizations. He has experience across the digital landscape, spanning digital media, publishing, RTB, finance, and technology platforms. Brian is Managing Director, North America of Xaxis. Xaxis currently serves over 1,250 clients and 22 markets across North America, Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. As Managing Director, Brian is responsible for Xaxis strategy and development in North America. Brian is tasked with leading the Xaxis mission to use data and technology to help advertisers reach and engage with audiences at scale across the region. Brian was named one of Folio magazine's 30 Under 30 emerging leaders in the publishing industry. Prior to Xaxis, Brian was Group CRO for IDG, Tech Networks, and Consumer Group. He led the team responsible for launching the IDG Tech Network. Welcome, Brian. Then we have next to Brian, Lou Paskalis. Lou Paskalis is the Senior Vice President, Enterprise Media Executive for Bank of America. In this role, Lou oversees paid media strategy and investment across traditional, digital, and social channels with an eye towards driving innovative media solutions across the lines of business. He is tasked with identifying and developing opportunities that leverage consumer insights and industry best practices in the rapidly evolving communications field. Prior to joining Bank of America, Lou was the Vice President of Global Media, Content Development, and Mobile Marketing at American Express, where he led innovative cross-channel communications and engagement initiatives for the Amex brands, including the launch of the interactive branded TV channel, forging the first e-commerce programs, leading communications planning for the annual Small Business Saturday campaign, and overseeing the team that developed Amex's first syndicated content player. Lou has been an innovator in the media, consumer promotions, and sponsorship world for more than 15 years. Please welcome Lou. Next to Lou is Rich Porter, Dick Porter, who is the EVP of President and Media Services at Meredith. Dick is responsible for overseeing and accelerating Meredith advertising sales revenue growth across media platforms. Dick brings an extensive background in aggressive sales leadership of national brands. Most recently, Dick served as the CEO for the Publishing Group of America. He also served as Executive Vice President, Interactive Advertising for AOL, and Senior VP at Advertising.com. His background also includes publisher of Prevention, Reader's Digest, and TV Guide, and he's a member of MN's Sales Executive Hall of Fame. Welcome, please welcome Dick. And to my left is Ritu. Trivedi is the Senior Vice President, Digital Strategy and Partnerships at MediaVest. Ritu oversees MediaVest digital investment and partnership for clients including Coca-Cola, Comcast, Procter & Gamble, and Honda. She manages the partnerships across the digital channels including mobile, video, social, and display. As a result of Ritu's innovation and impact, she has garnered numerous accolades including Cablefax's Digital Hot List for 2011, Media Week's Plan of the Year, and The Truth Well Told. And I can assure you she's going to tell the truth today with that kind of an award. Previously, Ritu served as managing partner at Mindshare and held management positions at Draft FCB, OMD, Universal McCann, and Ogilvy. Ritu began her career in India, where she earned her bachelor's in zoology in Mumbai, which is very applicable to our business. So if we have time, you can ask her a question about that. But we're here to talk about programmatic. So let's get right into it. This is a great panel we assembled representing agency, planning and investment, trading, publishing, and client perspectives that will explore programmatic media. Has it lived up to its expectations, and what may be next? No one can argue that programmatic media has garnered a lot of attention. The delivery of real-time, data-driven, value-based, targeted, and relevant experiences in the form of messages, offers, and content to consumers as they interact with the brand's many touch points through multiple devices is what most marketers are seeking for their brand. A very easy thing. This delivery of these experiences enhanced through the use of rules and algorithms, which automates the process and drives efficiency, has long been the goal of the agencies. And publishers seeking to further monetize and create value from their data-rich audiences have been embracing the opportunities that programmatic selling can achieve. So let's get right into the questions. What is your company's goals for programmatic media, and has it met your expectations? Let's start with Ritu.
I think the goals continue to change as the space changes, right? Over the last few years, it's become a topic of conversation across every meeting we've had. Our clients ask about it, internally, our executives think about it a lot more. So it's definitely something that we are talking about, trying to build for it, trying to get the right talent for it, operationally be more sound to do programmatic. I don't know if we have a goal overall as an agency. I think it is something by client based on the needs of the client. There's some clients that will lean in a lot more, and probably 60-70% of their business will go more programmatic. And there will be others that will dabble in it for a while before it becomes meaningful for their business. So we don't necessarily have an agency goal, but I can tell you it's something that we talk about a lot and are definitely putting a lot of action steps in place to move forward with it.
So Ritu, just a final point. Has it lived up to the expectations of you and MediaVest?
I think from a chatter perspective, yes. From an action perspective, I'll just say there's a lot of work to be done. The minute you think you have the right operationally, the right pieces in place, something changes. So I think it's definitely something that we're working on a lot more, and it is front and center.
Good, thank you. And from your perspective, Dick?
You want me to answer the first question?
Yeah, the first question.
So I think it's kind of a binary option for media from the sell side, which is there's going to be a market there. Either you participate or you don't. And there's some who have chosen not to. Our view is there's a lot of money that's going to flow through programmatic. Figuring it out has to happen. And I think, Carl, you used the word value a couple times. I think from our side, it really is. If done right, it's a market that should get the right valuation for what's in that buy. And with the power of our first-party data that we think we can put in there in a proprietary way, we believe we can actually do well in a programmatic marketplace.
Great. And Lou, spent your whole career on the client side, so you have a different perspective on programmatic. Do you have goals around that? Not financial goals, but expectations goals, and is it meeting it?
Yeah, so thank you, Carl, for that. And first, I want to do a quick PSA. At the front 6 tables, there are 17 open chairs for those of you standing in the back. And none of us would think it rude if 17 of you wanted to come and take these chairs so you don't have to stand the whole time, because we're not that interesting. Trust me. We'd rather be comfortable.
It's an efficient market.
Yeah, exactly. No one's moving. Okay. So I tried. I gave it my all, but... So no, I think for me, let me answer that with sort of a high school framework that we can all relate to, Maslow's hierarchy of need, right? So if you remember, this is the triangle, which down at the bottom had the safety needs, and up at the top had the self-actualization, right? I think programmatic is in sort of the safety needs era of where it could go. And what I mean by that, it's about efficiency, it's about unused inventory getting monetized, it's about a marketplace to move inventory to people with the greatest need, et cetera. As a marketer, I'm focused on one thing, and that is really getting inside of consumers' head and competing for relevance with all of their friends now, because the era of social media has put us in competition with all of their friends who share the same values, who have the same interests, who are focused on the same sort of cultural tentpole events. And we're there as an industry with sort of a lowest common denominator ad, which we're trying to create that's designed to not offend too many people and appeal to everyone sort of universally, and which has inherently a low degree of relevance. Where I look at programmatic, where I think that the self-actualization of programmatic is to say, all right, how can we link that data stream, that Dick sits on top of, and say, I want to create bespoke ad experiences in such a way that they are hyper relevant to people based not only on the context in which they're served, but on the insights I have about those individuals in a permission-based, anonymized and opt-in sort of transparent value exchange. I want the creative side of the house to catch up to the technical side of the house and provide me enough of an inventory of assets to take programmatic on and tailor messaging for consumers in a way that's going to break through and create engagement. That's where this can go. So for me, let's get the transactional stuff out of the way. Let's get that marketplace set up. Let's get everybody understanding it. But then let's pivot to making our ad assets better, seeing if we can use those same rails of programmatic to deliver content and advertising. And I think we have a lot of work to do there because it's going to be a major sea change for the people who make the ads.
Lou, that's a great, great perspective. Brian, from your Xaxis point of view, how would you respond to what Lou is asking for?
Well, I think, if you think about programmatic, we throw that term out, but we don't think about what surrounds it. And Lou touched on that. So you think about data, the ability to have a one-to-one conversation. And it's on the billboards over here, which is every ad, every platform, every screen. It's a great premise. And programmatic allows us to be able to do that. So I think from a technology standpoint, that's there. The next wave is inventory. So I think we've done, if you look at the market, I think we've exceeded expectations from a DR perspective. I think from a branding perspective, there's a wealth of opportunity to continue, both with broadcast and TV and video, and I think that'll help. At the same time, I agree with Lou in the fact that how we're engaging that conversation. So we can have a one-to-one conversation, but what are we saying? And are we tailored to be able to engage with different media in different formats? So how do I understand what the individual is? What do I want to show them at what time? And what's a discovery path of which they're on? I don't think we've touched that yet. We're getting closer to it. And that hits the last one, which is analytics, which goes to what's a story that we're trying to tell and what's actually working. For example, our organization has 60-plus analysts because if you put these things in a vacuum, they don't tell a great story. But if you start to pull out the signals from the marketplace, they do. And I think that's a key part to it.
That's a great goal that we need to all work towards. Ritu, you mentioned that some clients spend upwards of 60, 70%. Your head of investments for MediaVest, Forrester has said that by the end of 2013, they estimate about 21% of all display advertising was going to run through a trading exchange environment. And by 2015, just 2 years from now, it'll be 25%. And you cited different numbers. What would you say is the average? What should we expect as a percentage, do we think, in the programmatic trading area?
I mean, I think to all the points that were made earlier, from a DR perspective, and when I say 60, 70%, that's for clients that are looking for very specific acquisition goals. And programmatic does work very well there. We've proven that out. It works better than anything else they do. So from that perspective, those clients do tend to over-index. When it comes to branding, as Brian was saying and Lou was saying, there's so much work to be done there. So I don't know if we can peg a number because honestly, so many things have to come together for that to realize its promise. I think we've gotten overswayed by certain jargon about big data and about real time, but we haven't necessarily put all the right things in place to get beyond that, to actually realize that promise. When we started talking about programmatic a few years ago, it was all about, it was less really about the technology of it. It was more about data and insights, the insights that you can drive, the fact that you have all these audience segments that can deliver on even a better ROI for you. I feel like somewhere in the last year or two, we've lost our way a little bit. It's become more about the tech stack that you can put together. And frankly, there's a lot of people that we are trying to bring to programmatic within agencies and clients who glaze over that stuff. They don't understand that. That's not their language. And if we start only making this about efficiencies and tech stacks, I think we'll never get to even that 21%.
I just want to throw a comment on that because I think the analogy is like, for those of us who remember this, the difference between DOS and Windows. Right now, we're all working in DOS, which is, like, oh my God, file, print, range, green screen, right? Then all of a sudden, the graphical user interface came out, which was actually Mac, and we're like, oh my gosh, object-oriented, this is what I want to do. This is why the marketers, such as me, are kind of glazed over, because I don't want to know how the sausage is made, I just want to bite.
Exactly.
And that's
That's
where
why
we're
I
kind of
enjoy
hung
it.
up right now.
So Dick, that's all good news. You know, what Ritu's saying, what Lou and Brian, that want to move beyond just thinking about this as only for acquisition, marketing, where we started, and kind of go up further, and to think about it from a branding side. So what is Meredith's belief around that, and how does Programmatic change the relationships that your sales teams have with agencies and clients?
So there's a lot in there. One is, I think the
Pick
broad,
anyone.
the broad metadata for probably everybody in this room, there's not a lot of markets that perpetually go up, but one of them that we all live in is the market for accountability, right? No one gets to be less accountable next year than you were this year. You have a boss say, hey, you know what? It's great if you don't do quite as well as you did last year. Fantastic. The consumer expectation is that you'll deliver more. In fact, some consumers expect you to know more about them and deliver on that knowledge, as opposed to it's private. Some of them have an expectation that you'll deliver against that value. They'll trade it. If they're not buying something for you, for like websites, for example, in our business, we don't get paid for websites from consumers. We get paid for magazines. You know, a Martian would come down and say, that looks counterintuitive to me, but we love consumer revenue. So delivering on that consumer promise so they'll pay us, so we don't have to charge other folks maybe as much, is, you know, has a high value. I think at the end of the day, accountability is really critical. So we're problem solvers. We need to understand what the problems are. What are they really? Because the tech stack is not a problem we solve. That's something an agency deals with. But if you got a consumer problem, you need an insight, you need content developed, you need CRM, you need to really figure out how you're going to optimize a household, and what's the messaging and what's the contextual relevance that's required, and what's the data, and what's the frequency, and what's the medium. How do we do that? And by the way, will you backstop that with a guarantee against my KPIs, which we will do, because we believe we should sell stuff that works, not stuff that doesn't. And, you know, in our view, there's sort of, thank you very much. It was worth it to be on this panel already. You know, now from the salesperson, you know, I think it's a whole different animal because it's an emotional issue for salespeople. So as soon as you talk about, we're going to introduce programmatic selling at our organization, salespeople think they need to get their resumes out and they're going to be out of business. That's the immediate visceral reaction that salespeople have. And that's a real issue, you know, and for all of us, attracting and retaining talent and continuity all really matters. So if you've got people who thinking there might be out of business, that's a real challenge. So for us, it's been an education for a display seller who may not know much about programmatic, but needs to know enough about it, you know, like they need to know video and they need to know mobile and maybe they need to know audio. And I can tell you about holograms. I think, you know, get ready. We're all going to have to figure those out too. And people laugh. I promise you, we're going to have to figure out holograms. So, you know, it's a crazy world out there, but I think the emotional connection to your staff is a way that they participate. One big value for sellers, this will surprise the non-sellers in the room, sellers like to make money. Shocking, I know, but they actually care about their commission. Part of the answer is to protect them on how they get paid. So there's lots of things you need to do, but one of them is to protect them on how they get paid. And so as long as they know you've got their back on their compensation, they'll stay in. And I think maybe I'm getting ahead a little bit, but in our world, we would see programmatic being part of a holistic suite of solutions that could be multiple mediums, multiple tools. Some are media, some are non-media solutions. And programmatic is just a segment of a solution base that gets a marketer where they need to go against their KPIs.
Because Meredith has so many different channels, television and print and digital and video. So how are you thinking about that for the future? Will this move into other forms of media?
So, you know, one is, I think from the sell side, we're all going to be competing for data talent, right? Because, you know, we've got a world of generalists or specialists. Do you have someone who knows mobile and all they know is mobile? Do you have someone who knows desktop and all they know is desktop? Do you have someone who only knows a brand? You know, how do you sort of go to market? And it's some combination of generalists with SMEs, subject matter experts. And so as we look at our SME, you know, we've got plenty of people who know TV, we got plenty of people who know print, we got people who know some of our brands. We've got really great data people, but not necessarily great sales data people. So bringing a sales talent with the knowledge of data in this, you know, as others have said, I think we're still very early days. The talent, Rajiv and I were talking about this in the green room, the talent trails the market phenomenon and trails the technology. That's really good for talent, for those of you in the room who have resumes. There's going to be, you know, great opportunities, and people are going to have to pay to get the best and the brightest to come to their organizations.
So let's jump into talent, something that we were discussing before, because it does require different skill sets that we're all used to on all sides. So, Ritu, what are you doing? What is MediaVest doing? What should agencies be doing around the talent? Will this require different skill sets? Somebody coming into the market, how do you recruit, retain, and train in this completely evolving market? It ain't media planning the way it was when we started.
Exactly. I think it's a little bit of you got to look for new talent when it comes to certain skill set that we're talking about here. However, it's really important. We have a lot of very smart people who were doing traditional media, are now picking up digital very, very quickly, and will be able to pick up the programmatic language as well. I think when it comes to programmatic, what we forget is it's not just about the data people, right? You need people who can take that data and build insights, those business integrators, if you will. Those people need to know media and need to know data, but they need to be able to look at that data, build business studies out of it, case studies out of it, build business points out of it that actually solve the problems for our clients. Without that, it's just a lot of data. And I think those people, again, people who know media are frankly the only people who can actually do that very, very well. So it is about training those people, bringing them into this little new world that we have now, but also data and analytics is going to be a center of excellence. It already is at MediaVest. It's something that we recruit for a lot. It's something that our clients, you know, it's not just about dashboards, but it's really about being able to work with everybody in this room to get all the best data in one place for our clients, be able to build category insights. So definitely I would say it's about training a little bit of the old and bringing in some of the new, but you have to be very careful that that needs to work together. Otherwise you will end up creating silos that don't talk to each other.
So data, insights, somebody who knows how to cull insights from vast amount of data, it's a unique skill, and everybody's looking for them on the publishing side, on the client side. So Brian, this is a skill that is so needed at Xaxis. How do you recruit? How do you find talent?
We were fortunate enough, well, we just won the Crane's Top 75 Places to Work, but that is a dedicated effort by our entire team. And it starts with identifying the need, right? And I think when we look around our organization, it's not the same cookie cutter background. Everybody doesn't look the same, but one thing that is a common characteristic is passion. You know, I think anybody who's in this business, you have to create a place where people feel like they can learn, that they've got mobility, and that they don't have to sit at the same cubicle all day long focused on the same task. So for us, there's a variety of different things. You'll look at our roster and you'll see people that come from mechanical engineers, PhDs, math science. You'll also see individuals who come from leading strategy in an agency, because that's important as well. Putting those pieces together is paramount for us, but doing so in an environment where you have collaboration. You know, and if you look around, you think about, you know, as Lou said, making the sausage. It's not easy, you know. And if you look at doing it well and having, you know, we all talk about programmatic and we throw the term out there. It's extremely complex to find the right inventory, to find the right data, and then put it together in a format that flows seamlessly, that comes back, that meets a need. Those aren't the same individuals. It's not just a data scientist. It's not just a strategist. It's putting them all together, but having one collective vision on what that outcome is. And for us, that's helping our clients, first and foremost.
So Lou, you're on a different end of this. You're not recruiting necessarily to have people run programmatic, but it does affect your team and their knowledge and understanding. So what do you think about, how do you develop your talent at Bank of America to understand and grow and develop this landscape?
Yeah, I look at this, as the most exciting time to be in this industry, because what's happening now is there is a blurring of lines between creative and media, and it's being driven by rapidly advancing technology and rapid adoption rates of that technology, right? So this whole idea of being a creative technologist, which is this amorphous thing we've all been hearing about, I think to an extent, and that's what I think everybody in this panel is talking about, that's where we all have to lean in a little bit more. But a lot of that has to do with returning to fundamentals. On the sales side, I always looked at salespeople as my advocates inside of an organization. They will take what I'm interested in back to the shop and say, here's what we need. And then hopefully on their end, there's someone there who gives them enough time and respect and attention that will say, here's how we can craft that program and merchandise it back to your client. So on the client side, we need people who can recognize, and I would say it's a bit more of an entrepreneurial skill, the holistic solution across the platform that delivers experientially what we need. And this gets into the fundamental challenge I think we all have here, which is measurement. We talk a lot about accountability. I agree entirely with Dick that the accountability bar goes up every year. But we revert to this well-worn path of how ROI has been calculated in this industry for the last 60 years, and with a little CTR added in for special modernization. That's not what we're trying to do anymore. We're trying to engage people. We're trying to have an ongoing dialogue through paid media and possibly through other channels as well. But we need to have folks who can approach that challenge holistically, entrepreneurially, and be empowered to say, I think the metrics of success are these. Some of this is going to be fact-based. Some of this is going to be experimental, i.e. faith-based. And we're going to have to empower people differently, and they're going to have to embrace getting off the well-worn path, because in my opinion, the well-worn path has become a trench that we can't see out of. And that's really hurting this industry and our potential to get closer. And I think that's why advertising is losing relevance with the consumers we're trying to engage. And I think it's going to require new models, and it's a much more experimental era. At the end of it, though, at the end of the day, this will be my last comment on this, is we have a merchandising problem as an industry, whether it's on the sell side, the publisher side, the client side. If you go back to Marketing 101, they talk about the features, benefits, bridge. We're all talking about the features. We're talking about the efficiency, the clicks, et cetera. The benefits are those things that consumers will respond to. The benefits are, wow, these ads are really relevant to me. Wow, that's an interesting piece of content. Gee, I didn't know that about this organization. Wow, these people have the same values I have. That's all inherently possible in programmatic if we get out of the optimization mindset, or at least out of the optimization for finance and into the optimization for consumer experiences. That's where I think we win, and those are the kind of thought leaders that I'm looking to attract in our team.
Anyone out there? See Lou after. Lou, you brought up about new models, and we need to look at new models. So recently, AOL had their first programmatic up front. Everybody questioned, what is that? Is this good? They built it on for their owned and inventory that they own, and on their ad-learn platform. Brian, is this a new model? Is this one we can expect? Are there other models? How have you embraced that notion of different models?
Well, I think it goes back to what Dick said. How are we engaging with publishers, right? So for where Xaxis sits, we don't necessarily want to participate in an open marketplace. So we have a team that's dedicated and focused on building one-to-one relationship with publishers. And we feel that by doing so, we can leverage the heft of Group M and our $90 billion of ad spend. But at the same time, we found that the publishers that we do engage with find a 30% lift over the open market. So it's beneficial on both sides. And I think by looking towards that, identifying that relationship and having one-to-one does a few things. It prevents what I think the biggest challenge is, which is fraud in the marketplace. It rewards content, which I still think content matters and is valuable, especially if we go back to what Lou said. Let's get away from the analytics and let's think about telling the story. If you're telling a story, you could still utilize programmatic tools and what comes behind that with data, but still do so in an environment that's trustworthy, that's engaging, that customers want to see and be a part of. And I think too often we go completely silo-based. The more as an industry that we can come together and create those partnerships, so in a one-to-one type of relationship with publishers like Meredith, that's certainly our goal. And I think to do so, we know as a holding company, we have to bring something to the table. And that something is a upfront commitment so they can run their organizations and know what type of resources they can allocate throughout the year.
So could I just
Yes, please.
add to that, which is third-party data is kind of table stakes. It's commoditized. So not only is it accurate or is it legal? Are there bots running through? We've all been reading a lot about bots, and we've had click farms for years. So the most accountable medium still has a big problem in true audience calculation and true engagement calculation. But separate from that, there's data out there that's just table stakes. So who doesn't have auto intenders from name the third-party provider? Anybody doesn't have them? You didn't ante up. What really differentiates, I think, is first-party data, and that's rare air. First-party data has great value to it. At our company, we've been in the data business for literally decades, so we're really a database marketer disguised as a big media company, and know an awful lot about an awful lot of people, and the trust that's been given to us by those consumers is really important. So where I would just follow in that, I think a logic train of a future would be consortiums. So whether you look at clients or agencies or sellers like our company, there's only so much rare air. And if you give it to everybody, it's a commodity. And now you're going to get commodity pricing. So from our company, what we're going to say is we got rare air. It's only going to go to a few people. And I'm not going to just hand over my data and let you put it into some other third-party system that's got a leakage problem. And the folks like Programmatic are helping people on our side of the desk managing our data, because data leakage and data theft is a huge issue. And we work with a company called Crux that will go in and find pixels inside pixels and scrape them out, because the third party doesn't even know what's inside that pixel in some cases. So this is a big issue. Data security and trust, all we need is one senator's daughter to have a bad experience because someone misused her data, and this game is over. We're all back to buying contextual relevance. Right? So, so we take that very, very seriously because it's our data, at least to start with. So what we see is retailers, brands, agencies, media providers, and maybe some others thinking about what's the consortium that really drives the incrementality of that data that really is rare air, who's going to do the deal with me in a way that I can leverage my data on behalf of them and not just give up the ghost. I was just in a conversation yesterday with an agency that won't be named that just says, give me your data. Just give it to me. I don't want to give you any more revenue, but you should give me your data. It's like, great.
So speaking of that, Lou, are you going to give your data to Dick, Bank of America, to combine the two?
I think it's hard in the financial services category to be on the forefront of that. I think that by virtue of regulation and also perception, we need to color way inside the lines. So I think as a marketer, there are opportunities to exchange value, but I don't think that my company or anyone in the financial services company will take the lead there. I think it's going to be more about, I have this sort of vision of the future where we actually go to the consumers and say to them, in an ad, we are going to track you. If we track you, we are going to provide you more relevant experiences. If you don't want to be tracked, here's the simple way to not be tracked. I have to opt in, is what I'm saying. And by the way, if we ever screw up, we will, kill ourselves trying to fix it. And those are the kinds of things that are going to allow us to leverage data that we generate as partners moving forward, as opposed to proprietary stuff I've got back at the shop, which I'm not allowed to share. And even if I was allowed to share, I don't think I would because of perception. A CPG, an auto, maybe they're in a different sort of mindset than we are. I think the key, though, is making sure consumers understand what's in it for them and getting them to opt in. And even if it's only 5% of the marketplace, those 5% will start to create a context where, I'm having a really good experience because I'm being tracked. And somebody in this room is going to be very smart. They're going to make an app which is going to manage all your permissions. And I'm going to spend $19.99 a year to be a subscriber of that. And you know, I really don't like what that marketer did with my data. I'm taking them out and the permission's gone out of that app. That, I think, is a future that we should aspire to, as opposed to taking what's been given us in this context and trying to use it in that context. Marketers can't do it. I think publishers can do it on their platform, and that's why I think Dick's got a winning model with Meredith.
So
Well,
before we
well
open up to the audience and ask a few questions, lightning round. So fill in the blank, one word. Programmatic media equals return on blank. Brian.
Performance.
Performance.
Engagement.
Engagement. Dick.
Investment.
Investment. Ritu.
Value.
Value. There you have it. And we need to try and accomplish all of that as we move forward. I'd love to open it up to a few questions. Yes?
Microphone?
We can hear you.
Just,
what are the constraints and how quickly will that happen?
So either.
Let me repeat the question.
Yeah.
Rajiv opened up the conference with his idea of where the industry is headed towards increasingly towards do-it-yourself approaches from the top marketers. I was just curious if you agree with that, and over what time frame, and what are some of the constraints and factors that will enable that or constrain that adoption.
I'll take it from my perspective. I think for certain levels, that's attainable. But I think, to go back to what we just talked about a while ago, there's not enough talent as it is, right? And if you think about how complex this is, going beyond just a programmatic type of relationship, but going back to what the ultimate vision is a one-to-one relationship with my customers across multiple platforms that tells stories with dynamic creative, leveraging broadcast, leveraging GRP, having a strategy involved with that is a very risky business to take on yourself. So from my perspective, we focus solely on this, and attracting the talent and staying up and pivoting with the market is complex for us. So to try to do that on your own, I would think is a challenge at the levels of which people are really utilizing the technology to enable them to bring it a step further to get to that 25% of overall media spend.
yeah, that scares the heck out of me. I'm not talking about the same issues I was talking about 6 months ago in my world. And I probably won't be talking about the same issues 6 months from now. And I'd rather have that talent be concentrated in an agency environment or in a publishing environment where they're accountable to me to having the most up-to-date whatever. Right. And I'm accountable to them understanding the issues and seeing where the puck is going. Because the minute you build that expertise, you now have this legacy system, and we know in this industry what happens when you have too much legacy. You're saddled with it. So I would be hesitant to go in that direction.
I think there's another interesting phenomenon client side, which is it a centralized client or a decentralized client? So you sort of data or programmatic by definition is centralized. And there's going to be someone inside some company, and it exists today, that wants to kind of get command and control. But then there's some brand manager who's got a budget that needs to be met. And if that brand manager wants to sponsor the Super Bowl and not use data at all to do so, and they're accountable to hitting their numbers, they're going to do it. Yeah. So, to Lou's point, you build this big infrastructure of data, and does it really solving the way the organization is architected? It may not. And so it can become a big white elephant. And I think you're already starting to see that phenomenon. The other thing I would say is, data in itself doesn't do much, frankly, right? What inspires intention is content, right? Data's analytics are outcomes of content. But our friends at Google talk about ZMOT, great marketing. They claim they've got the 0 moment of truth. No one wants to claim the -1 moment of truth. But there is something that happens before you go to Google. You were inspired to go there by something. They call it stimulus. I would call it content. Programs like Breaking Bad, or AMC, what a role they're on, right? Now The Walking Dead just did 16 million. I mean, God bless them, fantastic. There's no data and analytics other than an audience demo on that. And lots of advertisers spending lots of big money. So, I think this blending of art and science and where the limitations of science are and where, you know, the dark arts of the magic of art is. Sometimes they're separate, and sometimes it's just a power issue, frankly, within an organization that says, I don't want to use your data because if I do, I give you more power. And I'm a brand manager, and I'm running my own career. So I think there's real-world issues around how organizations are architected.
One more question? Anyone? Yes? Over there.
It's a hot spot over there.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Skip Riddle from Powerlinks, and we come from the technology side because we're plumbing that drives, you know, great performance, publishers, advertisers, and whatnot. But one of the things we keep running into, and because I was in the ad business years ago, what about creative? You're talking about content, and that's so important, and yet the creative function seems to be left out of this. Because agency, financial directors, excuse me, but in many cases, they're saying, I don't want you to spend your time on that because we can't make much money on those creative units that you've got to develop. And yet, if we're going to be relevant to that individual, recognizing their needs when they're reading an article or whatever, and knowing where they come from and maybe where they're going, shouldn't we be able to have an ad that addresses them more relevantly? We've got technology that can help to do that, but where's the ad bank that's going to do that?
Who you want to take? Ritu?
Yeah, sure. I think you know, the reason you see people shying away from it, because if it's all about a 60-second commercial that needs to look great on TV, that is a business not a lot of agencies will get into, right? But if it is about addressing the needs of programmatic buying or real-time buying, we have started creating that suite of products for our clients now. It is about creating an ad bank, and that's very different than your 60-second commercials. We're not trying to compete with that. But what we are trying to do is, if we're going to bring to our clients media opportunities with programmatic, you're absolutely right. Where is the funnel of creative? If we are talking to 5 different audience segments, where is the creative to talk to them in a meaningful way? I will tell you, there's a healthy tension between how much we need to create, what our clients' production budgets are, who else are they tied to in terms of a creative agency, and how that all comes together. But those barriers are beginning to get broken. A lot of clients are saying, yeah, if I am going to get the promise of what programmatic means, then I need to be able to build. If I'm going to be on Twitter, if I'm going to be in some of this native platforms, then I need to build for them. So we're definitely seeing silos breaking down there and a need for more creative happening.
Yeah, I know we're at our time limit, but I would say this, as a client, as a lifelong client in this industry, this is a systemic, industry-wide, client-side failure. We are not pushing on the creative side as hard as we are on the technology and the value side. And you know, I've always been on sort of the value tech side as the media buyer. But it's the same. We build these elaborate models, and we have all the segmentation, and then we have 2 ads. And I've seen it across industries. I've seen it in every in every capacity I've worked in. We've got to get more articulate, and we've got to find new models where we can produce at scale the advertising assets and the content assets which most precisely comport with what the consumer expectation is, and then we will be, as an industry, as good as our potential. And right now, and this is a very frustrating thing for me, and I think we need to find new economic models with the agencies or maybe the vendors to create those ads. And in my mind, programmatic is the yin to the adaptive yang, and we have to figure out how to make that work across channels and across platforms if we're ever going to really achieve the potential at scale that I think programmatic offers us.
Lou, that was a great summary. I wish we had time for more questions. I allotted for chair time in that too. So thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you.